We often think of history as this solid, settled thing, a story of what happened. But what if the most interesting story is the one of what almost happened? It's incredible how a single moment, a single decision, or a single life cut short can literally change everything.
So that's the big question we're diving into today. We're looking at those moments where the death of one key person just slammed the book shut on one possible future and opened up a totally different one, the one we're all living in right now.
And believe it or not, this isn't just some fun thought experiment. There's actually a formal name for it: counterfactual history. Historians use it to really get a grip on cause and effect, and it's so compelling, right? It's inspired these super popular essay collections like the What If series, where top historians just go for it and explore these exact questions. So let's dive into our first case.
Okay, so we're starting way back in the 15th century, with a ruler whose ambition was, well, it was as massive as his empire. We're talking about Sultan Mehmet II, better known as Fatih the Conqueror.
So get this, in 1453, when he was just 21 years old, he does the impossible. He conquers Constantinople, which basically ends the 1,000-year-long Byzantine Empire. But for Fatih, this wasn't a finish line. Nope, it was just the warm-up. He had his eyes on a prize that would make the whole of Europe shake in its boots.
And look at this. This wasn't just some pipe dream. It was a methodical, step-by-step plan. After 1453, he spends years consolidating his power. Then in 1479, he signs a peace treaty with his biggest rival, Venice, to make sure his flank is secure. Smart. 1 year later, 1480, he launches his invasion of Italy, grabbing Otranto as a perfect strategic base. The stage was totally set for the final act in 1481, a massive army ready to march on Rome itself. This could have changed Western civilization forever.
And I mean, his intention couldn't have been more clear. Taking Rome, the symbolic heart of Western Christendom, was more than just a military win. It would have put the center of the Italian Renaissance and the home of the Pope under Ottoman control. Think about what that would mean for art, science, religion, everything.
The invasion force was gathering. All of Europe was panicking. The Pope was supposedly getting ready to flee the city. And then, history just pivots. On May 3rd, 1481, at the absolute height of his power, Fatih Sultan Mehmet just dies. He was only 49 years old.
And just like that, the whole grand plan to conquer Rome just vanished. Poof! His successor, Bayezid II, had completely different priorities. He immediately called off the campaign. The Ottoman troops in Otranto packed up and left, and the invasion was over. You could almost hear the collective sigh of relief from all across Europe as the Renaissance was left to continue on its path.
So Fatih's death stopped a conquest from the outside. But about a century and a half later, the death of another young Ottoman sultan stopped a revolution from the inside. Let's talk about the tragic story of Osman II.
They called him Genç Osman, or Osman the Young, and man, he came to the throne with a vision that was nothing short of radical. He wanted to completely remake the empire, cut wasteful spending, limit the power of the religious elites, and, this was the big one, get rid of the Janissaries, the super powerful but kind of corrupt palace troops. He wanted to replace them with a whole new army loyal to him. He even wanted to move the capital out of Istanbul.
I mean, these were some seriously revolutionary ideas. They threatened the entire power structure of the empire. And of course, his most dangerous plan to abolish the Janissaries leaked. As the story goes, he told his wife, who told her dad, the Sheikhul Islam, who then, you guessed it, warned the Janissary commanders. The result was a swift, brutal rebellion. The Janissaries overthrew the young sultan, and his own words from the dungeons, right before he was executed at just 18 years old, they really tell you everything you need to know about the tragedy. A bold, modernizing vision snuffed out before it even had a chance. Okay, let's jump across the world now to a more modern era and look at two of the most discussed assassinations in American history. Both of them created these huge, enduring what-if questions that people still argue about today.
So when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in 1865, his whole vision for a more forgiving and integrated Reconstruction pretty much died with him. Many historians think if he'd lived, his political genius might have led to a much smoother path for civil rights, maybe avoiding a century of racial conflict that came under his successor, Andrew Johnson. Now, contrast that with John F. Kennedy. When he was killed in '63, his successor, LBJ, actually used that wave of national mourning to push through a lot of JFK's domestic plans.
So on the surface, it kind of looks like JFK's vision carried on.
But when you start to dig in, especially when it comes to foreign policy, you stumble into one of the fiercest debates in modern history. What would a second Kennedy term really have looked like?
This debate is so intense you can still see it playing out online right now. So one school of thought is basically that Johnson just followed the playbook Kennedy had already written. The advisors were the same, the Cold War fears were the same. From this point of view, the escalation in Vietnam was going to happen anyway because JFK was every bit the Cold War hawk.
But then, you have the total opposite view. This side argues that JFK was secretly planning a massive shift, that he was fed up with the CIA, that he was trying to ease tensions with the Soviets, and that he was going to pull out of Vietnam after the '64 election. In this version of history, his assassination wasn't just a tragedy, it was a coup that put America on a terrible path.
So yeah, this one event has left this huge, unanswered question that's fueled decades of distrust and conspiracy. You know, if you find these historical turning points as fascinating as we do us a favor and hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into what might have been.
All right, so after going through all these dramatic, world-changing moments, you have to ask yourself, okay, why? Why do these questions even matter?
Well, it's because these thought experiments are so much more than just historical fantasy football. They have a real purpose in helping us make sense of the world we're in today.
They really show us how much of history can balance on the life of one person. It could be the ambition of a conqueror, the vision of a reformer, or the complicated agenda of a president. The premature end of that one life can send out ripples that last for centuries.
By picturing a different past, we actually get a much sharper image of why our present looks the way it does. It's a powerful reminder that nothing is inevitable. The world we live in is the result of countless crossroads, moments where things could have gone a completely different way. And that kind of brings us to one last thought. We've been looking at the what-ifs of the past, but what about right now? What are the slender threads being woven today that future historians are going to look back on? So I'll leave you with this to think about. What do you think is the biggest what-if of our time?